So welcome everyone to tonight's class on beautiful gardens on minimal water. So with that, Wendy, I didn't know if you and Victoria wanted to say hello, whatever works
Um,
for you.
Victoria, why don't you go first?
Hi,
Introduce
everyone.
yourself.
Yeah, hi. Happy to be here tonight. Glad you guys all could make it. I'm Victoria. I work for California American Water as a water conservation specialist in the Sacramento region. So looking forward to the program tonight.
And I am Wendy. I am the Southern Region Water Conservation Specialist, and I want to welcome all of you for coming on to this webinar. I know you're thoroughly going to enjoy it. It's a marvelous presentation, and I thank G3 for always being here for us to put on these webinars. Victoria and I are going to be in the background answering any questions you may need regarding CalAM and any programs, and Pamela will be in the background for the other technical stuff. So
Technical.
enjoy.
Thank you. And it is always our great pleasure to teach for you. So thank you. All right. So you will be getting a recording. And you will also be getting an email tomorrow with a series of links and resources that, again, will help you move forward with your landscape objectives. One of them includes this guidebook, California Watershed Approach to Landscape Design. So if for some reason you don't get it tomorrow, it goes into spam or what have you, just send us a note and we will happily send that back out to you. All right. So for those of you that have been to our other classes, you will recognize that we use this honeycomb as a way to navigate our classes. And it really is a reminder that everything is connected, everything is intertwined, certainly as we talk this conversation, as well as any of our other classes. So Beautiful Gardens on a Minimal Water is really a class about how do we potentially start small and they get more and more adventurous with what we do with our gardens. So usually it's the opposite. We go, okay, take it all out, start from scratch. But this way we're actually doing it a little bit differently. So we're going to start with, what does it look like if we simply reimagine our lawn? Number two is, what does it look like if we start making some of these changes? Number three, because obviously the water is very, very important. What is a conversation about efficient irrigation? What are things, both simple and perhaps a little bit more complex, that you definitely want to take a look at so that we at a minimum, minimize the amount of waste that happens. And then there's a couple of other ways of looking at how we start to, what's the word? Parse out how much work we're actually going to take on. So number four is, what does it look like if we do 20% for nature? Number five is protecting the trees, making sure that our most important resources are protected. And then number six, briefly talking about weeds. So we've had a few good years of rain, and certainly in Northern California, you got rain last year or this past winter. In Southern California, we were not quite so fortunate, and we live in California. So it is just a matter of time before we will go back through another drought cycle. So the idea is that we don't want to be doing like this roller coaster of it rains, it's dry, it rains, it's dry. We really want to put things in the ground that will be able to thrive, that will be able to be resilient regardless of what is happening with our climate. Because when we were in the depths of that drought, this was some of the ways that we responded. So people just stopped watering. And certainly in certain parts of California American Water, we were down to 1 day of watering. So yeah, we just turned it off, or we watered once a week and it wasn't enough. Unfortunately, this was also a response. We took out most of the life, put in gravel, a few succulents, and hoped that that would take care of it. Unfortunately, we were actually seeing this where people were spraying their brown grass in the attempt to make it look green. And we are still seeing this as a solution, which is they took out landscape and they put in plastic. So this will not help us create a resilient, thriving planet. What happens when those are the choices we make is we actually end up creating a desert. When the soil gets so parched, what we end up with is actually almost contradicting everything that we want to be able to create. So when we make those choices in our gardens, we end up with no drought abatement. We have a negative impact on our clean water, on our clean air. What if you were a bird or a mammal? You certainly wouldn't want to be hanging out in this environment. And we do nothing to combat ever increasing heat island. And of course, when it comes to carbon, we're doing a terrible job of sequestering it. So this is definitely not the direction we want to be going. And so we show you this slide of an image that is green and lush, and it doesn't have to use a ton of water. It is quite possible to create something that feels like this, that has the essence of this, but on minimal water. Here are other options. So again, depending on what your aesthetics are, where you live, your climate, this is definitely, there's color, there's habitat, not using nearly as much water. And the way that we get there is through the watershed approach. So this is a slide that we use in all of our presentations. It is the lens through which we look at the landscape. There's four key principles. They are growing a healthy living soil sponge, which is really the foundation of any landscape. Selecting climate appropriate plants. So whether you live in Southern California or Central Coast or Northern California, you are selecting plants that will adapt or are adapted to your particular climate. Passively capturing rainwater, something that is not talked about enough when it comes to building a landscape, and then highly efficient irrigation, but only when necessary. So moving away from the default that if we have a garden, we have to irrigate. But rather, when we have those first three items, the amount of water that we are applying through irrigation can be reduced significantly. So on the left, we have a typical garden, potentially what many of you have this evening. There's turf, maybe a tree. Soil is compacted, not a lot of nutrients for the plants, not a lot of diversity. If it rains, or even if we're irrigating, that water is running off. And the soil has certainly not been contoured to hold on to the rain. On the right, this is what we aspire to, and this can be accomplished regardless of what your landscape looks like. So again, we've got this living soil sponge now that holds on to rain or water when it gets it, releases it to the plants as they need it. We've contoured the soil for rain, which then fills the soil. It's how we replenish our aquifer. With plants, there is a diversity and an abundance of them. And again, the amount of irrigation that we are using is minimal. So that is big picture. Those are the objectives that we are striving for. And what we're going to show you really is how that can be accomplished. Those objectives can be accomplished in lots of different ways. So we're going to start at the beginning with reimagining the lawn. So most of the time when we're thinking about lawn, what we're actually thinking about is a monoculture. So it is all the same plant. It's typically mowed to 2 inches. Maybe you're applying pesticides or insecticides or herbicides or what have you to keep it looking a particular way. That does not make for a resilient lawn. So a resilient lawn means you can have green and not need nearly as much irrigation. It starts with the soil. The grasses that you've brought in are climate appropriate. We have a diversity of grasses in there. The potential that you can actually contour even lawn areas to capture rain, and the irrigation that is being applied is as efficient as possible. Because when we're talking about these monocultures, we are using anywhere between 4 and 6 feet of water per year for that grass to stay healthy. I mean, that is a bright green carpet. And the challenge with that is oftentimes, for various reasons, irrigation, or we don't know what we're doing, we're actually applying almost twice as much. So yeah, we're applying anywhere between 8 and 12 feet of water. And to put that in perspective, the amount of rain that we get is maybe, anywhere between 18 inches to, let's say, 30 inches, 2.5, let's say 3 feet. So every time we water our lawn, we are dipping into our reservoir, our water budget, in order to keep it looking this way. So what is the plan? What's the strategy as you're looking at your green grass going, what are my options? So the first one for some people is, I love that green grass and I'm going to keep it that way regardless of the cost or the consequences. Number two is, we're going to keep the grass, but we're going to shift the point of view as to what that grass can look like. And the possibility that if you are keeping the grass, it is temporary. So that as we build up the health of the soil, the health of that landscape, at some point down the road, you will be able to transition to a different kind of landscape, some of the ones that we looked at a little bit earlier. So one of the biggest things that you can do when it comes to minimizing the amount of water and maximizing the health of your lawn is biodiversity. As I said, most lawns are planned as though they are monoculture. They don't usually stay that way. But the idea is that we are actually now inviting diversity, and we're potentially overseeding, because the more different kinds of plants we have in the landscape, the better we will do. And the idea is that the image here, you look at their leaves, and it is their solar panels, right? It's how they are doing their photosynthesis. But there's so much that happens below the ground as well. So you look at typical turf, that monoculture, and you've got, I don't know, 6 inches, maybe sometimes it goes a little bit deeper, but compare that to other grasses. So this image is prairie plants, all kinds of grasses, and some of those go down literally 13 and 14 feet deep. And that is what is possible. And it's not just about those roots going down into the soil. So yeah, it's great having those roots. They help sort of decompact the soil, but it's also about what is happening to the biology in the soil, and how absolutely essential that diversity in the biology is to create this soil sponge we keep talking about. It doesn't happen accidentally. It happens with planning and with feeding the biology with organic matter. And when we do that, as that biology is building that healthy soil, that is how we create more resilient, thriving plants, even our grasses. So we saw some of those images of roots that go down 14, 15 feet. And that is really what we are trying to encourage here, is to get water down into that green water zone. And the water is where the roots are. The biology is where the roots are. And so obviously, the deeper the roots go, the more access they will have to water. So we're not having to apply water so frequently. Other benefits is the wildlife that it invites. So you've got pollinators, which are incredibly important. You've got your natural predators. We're actually calling them natural allies now, so that you don't have to resort to pesticides in order to keep those pests under control. And so I'm going to show you some images now about what these biodiverse lawns can look like. We also call them polyculture lawns. And it, yes, can be grasses, but it can also be other kinds of plants. So we actually have little geraniums, little cranesbill in there. The possibility that we can add native grasses. So the idea that you leave your lawn, you don't have to take it out, and you actually overseed. So we're now integrating grasses that are much more drought tolerant, can survive on much less water. A field of yarrow, again, the same thing. You can overseed with yarrow. Yarrow is actually also a California native. You can mow it if you want, or you can let it bloom. You can play on it. And then there's lots of other possibilities. This is actually Carapia, which has gotten more and more popular. It is quite resilient. It's actually an alternative for lawn for folks that want to take out their grass because you can run on it and play on it. And you can mix them up. Nature loves diversity. So you can have your grass, you can add yarrow to it, you can overseed it with clover, and then again, additional grasses beyond what you started out with. And the more complex an ecosystem is, the more resilient it becomes. And it's not necessarily intuitive, but it is the fact that the more plants we have, the less water that landscape actually requires. So less water, no need for fertilizers, bringing in chemicals, nothing toxic, and it is now green all year round. Look at all those benefits. All right, as we go into the second honeycomb, I want to remind you to ask your questions. Don't wait until the end. If it's something I haven't talked about yet, or even if it is something I'm talking about, you are invited to ask questions about your very specific landscape. So make the changes. What do we mean by make the changes? So in order to actually accomplish this more resilient lawn and landscapes to come, we really want to create optimal conditions. One of the first easiest things that you can do is you no longer need to mow to 2 inches. It is actually very stressful for a lawn to be mowed. 2 inches means all of a sudden it needs to take its energy and apply it to healing itself, basically, rather than developing a strong root system. And then, believe it or not, 2 inches of turf is less shade than 4 inches. So let your lawn grow at least to 4 inches before you come along and mow it down. Something else that will help with the permeability of your landscape is you need to dethatch. So grass, more often than not, warm season grasses more than cool season, but even cool season grasses will build thatch. And that is basically an accumulation of dead plant material, dead roots that just keep mounding up. And as a result, that means that water isn't being applied very well. So even though it rains or you're running your irrigation, you've still got these brown spots. Odds are it's all about the thatch. So you want to do that twice a year. The healthier your grass gets, the less frequently you will need to do this. You definitely don't want to do it this time of year because it is stressful for the grass. So you're looking at the cooler time of the year. The next thing is you need to get oxygen in the soil. So most people know, oh yeah, we got to get water to our plants, but very few people realize that we actually need to get oxygen in the soil as well. That biology needs oxygen. The way you do that is with a core aerator. This is a manual one. This will take you a very long time. You can certainly rent them. And the idea is that you are pulling plugs out of the landscape so that we can get that oxygen down a little bit lower to where the biology lives. And then we feed the soil party. So I mentioned organic material. You can use compost, you can use worm castings, you can use humates. But the idea is that there is so little activity in the soil that the biology that is there is moving kind of sluggishly. It may be dormant in some cases. So we're putting in that organic matter that feeds the soil party. They get going and they basically get to work as far as improving the structure, the health of your soil and your garden as a result. And then I mentioned some of the other plants. We saw some little geraniums, we saw clover, we've talked about grasses, but this is the shifting your perspective part. The idea that you look at your landscape from sort of like a wider lens. It doesn't have to be this fine grass, but the possibility that you've got this green carpet and there could be lots of different plants in that carpet. So here are some examples. Sometimes people call them weeds. We call them forbs. Interestingly enough, some of these are actually edible, like dandelion or purslane. You can go to the farmer's market and pay $3 a bundle, or you just let it grow in your garden. And all of these are important as far as actually healing your soil. So they help with compaction, potentially with getting different minerals and vitamins into the soil. So they are a positive in the landscape. Overseeding, we talked about the yarrow, the clover, cranesbill, which is that little geranium, Bellis daisy, and these are just a few. And what they bring to the garden is they are perennials, they are low water using plants, so we're starting to get more of a balance. Depending on what you bring in, they are evergreen, and some of them are also nitrogen fixers. Now, when it comes to adding the compost, to go out and do it by hand, you can, or you can get these compost spreaders or seed spreaders, and we just need 1/4 of an inch, tiny amount, making sure again that that soil has been, or that lawn has been aerated first so that it has an opportunity to get down into the ground. Right, efficient irrigation. What does that mean? Efficient irrigation. Spray comes on, spray goes off. In this case, you can see we've got lots of runoff. And so in order to have an efficient irrigation system, it depends on a few things. One, that system needs to have been well designed. It needs to have been well installed, and it needs to be well maintained. When it comes to the installation and the maintenance, you want to make sure that the equipment that you are bringing in, or your contractor is bringing in, is good equipment. This is not a place to be cutting corners. And then, of course, incredibly important is what is the actual schedule for that irrigation. Is your landscape being watered based on what the water needs, or the plant needs, rather than you have picked a number out of a hat, which unfortunately is usually the case. And when we are applying that water, part of the efficient formula is that we make sure that every single drop goes to where it needs to go. So the way you're going to do this, and with this hot weather, this is just a great time this weekend to be doing an irrigation checkup. Turn on your sprinklers or turn on your drip system and see what is happening. Now, take a look at the different kinds of sprinklers. If you have spray, what types do you have? The conventional spray down in the lower right-hand corner, lots of overspray, lots of misting. It is the least efficient of our spray, our overhead irrigation. Multi-trajectory rotary nozzles or MP rotators are a much better option. They are more efficient. The water is applied more slowly, which is huge. What that means is that when that water is applied, the soil actually has enough time to absorb the water rather than having it run off, which is what happens typically within 3 or 4 minutes. Rotors work on a similar principle, but you just tend to find them in a larger landscape. Other things you're looking at is how's the pressure? Pamela and I were actually at a landscape where I think they had pressure that was some insane, like 250 pounds per square inch. You usually want to be, easily under 100, closer to 60, 75 pounds per square inch. When your pressure is too high, you get misting, which means that that water is evaporating. If you have a drip system and the pressure is too high, you can literally blow the different components apart. On occasion, not very frequently, the pressure is actually too low. And when that happens, then all of a sudden your spray heads are not watering the entire radius that they are supposed to. And actually, I take that back. The pressure, yes, but what can sometimes happen if the spray system was not properly designed or installed is that you can get great pressure for the first few heads, and then as you sort of come down to the end of the line, that will get lower and lower. So making sure that there is enough pressure for all of those spray heads to be watering at the same rate. So if you need to reduce your pressure, you are potentially looking at installing a pressure regulator. This can be installed by a plumber or a landscape contractor. And then just finding those obvious ones. turn on your irrigation system and see, do you have a geyser? Does the spray head actually not pop up the way it's supposed to? Is it watering the car instead of the landscape? They tend to go on at 5 in the morning when everybody is asleep, so we just don't see what is happening. And does your coverage look like this? So this is what we would call not head-to-head coverage. The idea with head-to-head coverage is that there's actually an overlap in the sprinkling, so that everything is watered at the same in the same amount. You don't get these big brown spots where there just isn't quite enough water getting to those. Timing is super important. With the MP rotators, they are slower. The drops are heavier, but still, after a certain amount of time, the soil is just not absorbing that water, and so you will start to get the runoff. So there's something called cycle and soak, very much as the name implies, that you are going to run your sprinklers for a certain period of time, or even your drip for a certain period of time. Then it will shut off for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, and then it comes back on for the balance of that irrigation cycle. Now, a note there, make sure that when you are running your irrigation, even with cycle and soak, that it is within the local watering requirements. All right, moving on. Don't forget to ask your questions. Don't wait till the end. Beautiful gardens on minimal water, saving 20% for nature. So now what we're doing is we're starting to move away from the idea that we are leaving the lawn in its entirety, and we're going to do this work to make it more diverse and more resilient and less water using. This is, I want to put my foot into the water, just a toe. So the possibility, and it's quite doable, that instead of taking out all of your lawn, you're just going to take out a portion of it and you're going to start experimenting. So we say 20%, in this case, it's 24 inches, which means that you don't have sprinklers right up against the hardscape, which is a huge benefit. So we're actually going to go ahead and remove, in this case, it's our 2 feet from the sidewalk. And in doing so, and that is what they did here. Maybe it's a little bit wider than 2 feet, but they left the central lawn area and they planted the perimeters with this beautiful landscape. You've got roses in there, you've got a red bud in there. There's all kinds of different plants in there. You've got succulents in there. And the option is, yes, you can irrigate it separately, but in most cases, there is enough water in the lawn that these plants on the perimeter can actually use it as their water source. Now, possibly in the beginning, when these plants have just gone in and we're establishing, we're giving them a little extra with a hose. But it is quite possible, especially given this palette, that they would do just fine with the overspray from the sprinklers. Now, as I said, in this particular example, the lawn isn't close enough for certainly that front planter area to be able to take advantage of it. So it may be that you do have to bring in a second valve, an irrigation valve, and then in that case, you're going to put drip in there. So we don't want spray. At this point, really spray works for lawns or large swaths of ground cover. Anything else, we definitely want to be shifting to drip, or you could hand water. So that segues into protecting the trees. We've got our lawn, we've got our trees. Now we've added, potentially that we've got this perimeter of plantings. What happens when we have a lawn and our trees have gotten very adapted to being watered 3 times a week for 10 minutes, and we turn the sprinklers off because we're back in a drought and our watering has been cut back? So yeah, the grass died. But if we are not careful, the trees are going to die as well. As I said, they are accustomed to being watered on the same schedule as the grass. So when you go cold turkey on the irrigation, they go into shock. So we recommend that you actually plan ahead. And that plan is to protect your trees. If push came to shove and we had to turn off the irrigation, the spray on the lawn, if we had a dedicated valve just for the trees or the trees and the shrubs on drip, then those plants could be protected. And yes, the lawn might die, might not die, or might just go dormant for a while, but you can replace that relatively easily. It'll cost a little money, true, but it's not like you are replacing a 30 or 40-year-old tree or a beautiful hedge. Um, so the idea is that you're going to cut this ring. We want to move the grass away from the plant, ideally to the canopy, if not, certainly 3 or 4 feet radius. And then you're going to go ahead and mulch it, keep those roots cool, and we go ahead and add drip irrigation just to the tree. So you've got a couple of options. You can do a series of concentric sprinklers. In picture on the left, they've actually used a soaker hose. So lots of different options, but the idea again is that it is separate from the lawn, can be scheduled independently. And the other big benefit is that when you are watering a tree specifically, you can actually separate the irrigation schedule. So now we are watering less frequently, but for a longer period of time, so that we can actually encourage those roots to start going deeper. Now, the other scenario is that you've taken out all of your turf, a very similar condition. All of a sudden, that tree's not being watered with spray irrigation. So as you are planning the rest of your garden, whatever it is that you're going to be bringing in, whether it's California natives or it's edibles or it's shrubs, or succulents, as you are planning the irrigation for those plants, don't forget about irrigating the tree. Right? With the tree, the idea is that we want to be irrigating all the way out to the canopy, because where the canopy is where the roots are. They call them feeder roots. They go all the way out to that plant's canopy. We are going for the whole shebang here, because what we're actually doing is we are doing the whole shebang, and we are removing the turf and we are replacing it with a complete watershed-wise landscape. So the timing is important. Yes, we live in California. You can plant all year round, but still there are times when it's a little bit easier, a little less stressful on the plants. Obviously, we don't want to be planting in pouring rain. If we can avoid it, we don't want to be planting in the middle of August, but still we can. But as far as just the flow, the idea is that you're going to go ahead and create a design, depending on what rebates are available. You'll go ahead and submit that design, get it approved. If you can, we want to be planting after the rains or before the rains. So there's sort of that sweet spot where we can really take advantage of that natural watering system. Then, once your rebate has been approved, you're going to go ahead and remove that turf. There are different ways that you can remove the turf. We talk about it in the guidebook that you'll be getting it. And the idea is, if you're going to be leaving grass in place to be sheet mulched over, basically to be smothered, that is something that is great to do during the summer. Days are long, they are hot, there's lots of biological activity, and your grass will die more quickly. If you're removing it via sod cutting, then basically doesn't really matter when, because you're just basically shaving that grass out. And then as far as actually getting it in the ground, we would be looking at late fall, early winter. So yeah, if you could do November, December, January, February, March, April, May, depends where you live. So again, we actually just planted a couple of gardens in the summer. It was hard. We've had some plant loss. So if you can avoid it, great. If not, just be mindful, keep an eye on them, and don't do it when we're hitting 100 degrees. Just let that heat wave let that heat wave sort of die down, and then go ahead when the weather cools down just a little bit. So different ways that we can remove the turf, the idea of sheet mulch and sod cutting and sheet mulch. We're going to take you through that. So we come back once again to the importance of the soil in any landscape, whether it was our lawn or it is these full conversions. The health of our soil is so important. And sheet mulching, it's also known as the lasagna method, is basically this idea that we are layering. We're layering paper and compost and mulch and lots of water. And this helps with building the health of the soil as well as keeping down the weeds. As far as tools and materials, most of these are pretty self-explanatory. Let me talk a little bit about the mulch that we want to be using. Mulch, we want to use what's called living mulch. So nothing rubber, nothing that's been painted or treated. Ideally, it is tree trimmings that have been ground up that you can use. When it comes to the paper, yes, you can use newspaper. Yes, you can use cardboard. Those are both a little bit harder to work with. We've been using that brown paper roll, pretty inexpensive. You can get it just about any place, 36 inches wide, and it is the easiest to work with when it comes to putting it down on top of the soil and then mulching on top of it. And then the last one, the images of worm castings, but again, you can use compost, the worm castings, or something called humate, which is like a concentrated form of compost. Call 811 before you dig. They come out, it's a free service, and they let you know where the utilities are on the street. Not on the property, but even knowing where they are on the street is a huge help to make sure that you don't accidentally hit something when you're working. And then you're preparing the lawn. It doesn't matter which method you're going to use. I'll talk about the sod cutting in just a moment. But you want to flag all your sprinklers so that we know where they are. Even if you're going to be capping them later, you don't want to trip over them. You don't want to have equipment hit them. So good to know where they are. Next, you're going to mow that grass as low as possible. We are removing organic matter. The less of it that is there, the easier it will be to remove it. And then soaking that existing lawn thoroughly. So the image you're looking at, that grass is pretty dead. Over time, different agencies have gotten more particular about what that grass looks like. It now needs to be much more alive looking. And that is a benefit because when the grass is greener, it's actually easier to replace when the soil is moist. And having that soil be not completely parched means that we are getting that soil party started. We're sort of jump starting things by making sure there is enough moisture in the soil for them to be more active. Now you will need to get rid of it. In some cases, if you're sod cutting again, if you're leaving it in place, then it will die. You don't need to do anything with it. But as far as planning, you will need to order a dumpster in order to get rid of it. You can remove it with a truck or put it in your trash bins, but if you have any sort of amount of lawn, that's just going to be very challenging to do. And then the actual process of sheet mulching is you're going to be adding organic matter and water, lots and lots of water. So the process is, the image on the left is the turf has been removed with sod cutting here. You can see that there is a trench there. The trench is super helpful in terms of making sure that grass doesn't grow back into the planting area, as well as making sure that when we put that mulch in there, it doesn't spill out onto the sidewalk. This is all in the guidebook. The idea that in the trench, we're actually going to build a burrito. So this idea that we overlap the sidewalk with that extra paper, we put in some mulch, and then we sort of backfill it with the paper and then add some more mulch. And it just creates like this really nice barrier between the hardscaping where grass can grow and your new planting areas. Then as far as putting down that paper, it's a little bit like paper mache. You're going to overlap it by 6 inches. You're going to wet it. And then you will go ahead and add the mulch. Now, when it comes to mulch, we're talking about 3 to 4 inches. So it's not just this like light sprinkling. 3 to 4 inches is what it requires in order to do that smothering of weeds and grass growing back, as well as it needs to be able to break down over time. So what we recommend is you're going to put down 1 to 2 inches first, water it really, really well, and then add another 1 or 2 inches. You will be amazed at how much water it actually requires in order to get that mulch thoroughly wetted. If the mulch doesn't get thoroughly wetted, it's not going to break down. So you're not going to get the benefits of applying that mulch to your landscape. Skip the weed fabric. You do not need to be spending money on this. It doesn't break down. It actually grows weeds, right? Because seeds come from the sky or from birds. Then those roots get in there and then you try to pull it out and you just have a big mess. So paper does the same thing and it will break down. So let's talk a little bit about the 2 options. One, the easiest, if you have cool season grass. So cool season grass is going to be like a Kentucky blue or rye. Basically, it has delicate leaves, needs that 4 to 5, 6 feet of water per year in order to look green. So what you do is you're going to do what we talked about in terms of mowing it and watering it and flagging your sprinklers, and then you go ahead and you do the sheet mulching right on top of the grass. So that process I just walked you through, you just do it right on top of the grass. Now, big benefits, much easier in terms of labor, much less expensive, and all of that organic material stays in place. You actually don't have to worry about getting rid of anything. Downside for some people is it takes time. 2-3 months, depending on the time of the year. And there's certain times of the year where it's not going to break down. So, if you're putting it down in the winter time, just may not be much activity happening. And probably the most critical is it doesn't work with warm season grass. So if you have a Bermuda or you have a St. Augustine or a crabgrass, this will not smother it. That stuff is just too tough. So here you can see sheet mulching right on top of the grass, how we've extended the paper onto the sidewalk. You can see how we're starting the burrito method by putting in that mulch there. Then that paper gets folded back over, and then you just go merrily on your way with water, compost, paper, mulch, more water, more water. It is quite possible that when you install your garden and you do this sheet mulching process, your water bill will be higher than what you are accustomed to. But it's just this one time in order to kickstart the garden. And then once it breaks down, you're going to go ahead and contour it for that rainwater capture. Then you add plants and mulch, plant them small. They grow quickly. All right, here is the other method, the sod cutting and sheet mulching. In this case, the idea is that we are actually going to mechanically remove the sod, the turf. We're not going to smother it. So you're going to use equipment, a sod cutter that basically shaves the grass. You get the top material as well as some roots. Benefits, you can plant immediately. You can do this almost any time of the year. And it is really the only method that works well for warm season grasses. Downside, because there's always the pros and the cons, is it is more work. It is more labor intensive. It is more expensive. Takes a little bit more expertise. You are losing that organic matter, right? Because you're removing all of those roots, removing all of that, quite a bit of topsoil as well. And so that is the downside. So here you can see sod cutters. There are different kinds. You can absolutely rent this equipment. And what you're doing is you're slicing it and then you're rolling it up in these almost like little ho-hos that you're then going to go ahead and dispose of. Things you want to watch out for is don't let those rolls get too big. You have wet soil that gets heavy very, very quickly. In some cases, they actually recommend, if you can, just once you've gone ahead and done the sod cutting, is to just let it sit there for a couple of days and let some of that wet soil dry out. And then that way, when you're rolling it back up, some of the dry stuff will fall off. You'll be able to keep it on site, and it's going to be a little bit lighter. Same thing, you go ahead and you grade for rainwater capture. You can do it in the same day, right? So this happens much more, much quicker. And then you sheet mulch on top of that, and you plant. So what replaces the turf? So many options. This is just where you go to town. So if you like it cool, you can certainly do that. These are all very climate appropriate plants. And you've got your mauves and your pinks and your periwinkles, your silvers and your grays. This is a very calming, soothing type of garden. Walkable is absolutely possible. You've got diamondia on the left. As you move back into the garden, you've got trees and other climate appropriate plants in there. And you can absolutely still have your grasses. So there's something really lovely about grasses, the way that they move, and quite a few of them, especially we have lots of California natives, are quite adapted to our climate. They don't need that much rain, and they come in different sizes. They come in different shades. You can get like blue grasses or variegated grasses, and then you can mix and match with other types of plants. Don't forget the parkway. It is part of your property. Ideally, what you've done is you've created something that matches what you're doing in the front yard. So there is a sense of cohesiveness there. And the idea is that when you've got your turf, you can definitely make it more interesting. So believe it or not, that was the same garden, turf, yeah, green carpet, maybe you've added clover and stuff, but the idea is that, yes, I've got grasses, but goodness, look at all of the other plants that are growing in there, that invitation for pollinators, birds, wildlife, etc. So in this case, we went from 2 million gallons, believe it or not, to 200,000 gallons with this transformation. And here you've got your native grasses. You've also got buckwheat, which the butterflies absolutely adore. So lots of potential there. And the way California American Water is going to help you get there is they've got some rebates available for you. So if you are in the LA or Ventura area, the rebates start at $2 a square foot, depends on the area and while funding lasts. If you're in the San Diego area, the rebate is $1.50 a square foot, up to 750 square feet, a bit more for commercial. In the Sacramento, Meadowbrook, and Hillview areas, we've got $2 a square foot, again, while funding lasts. Sonoma, Larkfield, and Geyserville, $1 a square foot, again, while funding lasts, and depending on where you are, there may also be maximums and minimums in terms of how much turf can be removed. And again, if you're in the LA or Ventura area, there are also rebates on smart controllers and other outdoor devices. Smart controllers are incredibly beneficial when it comes to properly managing the water irrigation, how much water gets applied, when, and for how long. All right, we have come to the end of this presentation. We've got a few more minutes for questions. I saw stuff coming up in the chat. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop sharing. We have an evaluation, so we're going to go ahead and put that up. And while you are filling that out, let us know what worked, what maybe didn't work as well. There's a question about what other classes you might be interested in taking, which is great information for our California American hosts to know what you would be interested in finding out more about. And yeah, let's go ahead and do some questions. All right.
I think Pamela's still typing.
Yes, yes. So maybe while we're waiting, is there anything, Victoria or Wendy, that you would like to go ahead and say as we come to the end of tonight's class?
I do want to say that for all of our people that have come on, that registered and attended, we are going to raffle off. We're going to do a random drawing for all of your emails and send the lucky winner off one of our 8-station Ratio smart irrigation controllers for free. If just as a thank you for joining us here tonight.
That is quite the gift.
Yes, that's great. That's a great thing. Okay, so lots and lots of questions. People, this is a hard class in some ways because the programs are really talking about removing grass and replacing them with other plants. And it's really hard to do.
If truth be told.
Truth be told, we've been doing it for 20 plus years and it's really hard to do. And so a lot of what we have been exploring, the sheet mulching definitely works a lot better. With warm season grass, if you want to remove it, you have to cut it out. You have to. Sheet mulching alone will really not do the job. So all the people who are asking about Bermuda grass and how do I get rid of it and all this stuff, you have to cut it out. And use a pickaxe and grub out what's called grubbing out whatever little bits are left behind. And you have to stay on top of it. And as soon as you remove the organic matter, you must apply more organic matter. So there has to be compost. There has to be lots of plants that go pretty quickly into the ground. Because that's the only way that the soil microbial community will be stimulated to decompose whatever remnants of the old grass are there, and also to get your plants, situated so that they're able to either compete with anything that's left behind or just, suppress even things that might be left behind. Landscapes are a really complex ecosystem, and what we want to try to do, and what Marianne has talked about in this class, is finding ways to add things into the process to improve the soil, improve the plant health, so that things that, require a lot of help, like monoculture of grass, can't really survive. They're just not, we're not giving them water, we're not giving them fertilizer, we're not giving them food, any other stuff. So yeah, so this is a complex question, how do I make sure I get rid of Bermuda grass? And honestly, I'm spending a lot more time on honeycomb number 1, or number 2, whichever one it was, which is reimagine the lawn. Like, let's think about, can we plug other plants into the lawn? Can we overseed with other seed into the lawn, and over time outcompete, some of the grasses that we don't like anymore? It's a lot less expensive, a lot less frustrating. You're kind of just relaxing and letting nature take its course instead of being so frustrated that you can't get rid of, that really pernicious Bermuda grass. Yeah, so that covers a lot of questions. What to do about hills and steep areas, and I'm not really sure if that question is to remove grass on those areas or if it's about what to do about them. If you have grass on a hill and steep area, I would not disturb it under any circumstances. I would add into it. It's just start there. And Marianne, you can pick up on that if you want.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. But it sort of boggles the mind that you've got a steep hill with grass on it, it's like, who's running the lawnmower on something like that? I mean, it just, you see it and it is absolutely crazy. You know, if it's wild grasses, then potentially, yeah, you're adding more native grasses or shrubs or trees. Yeah.
Question here about where do I find a good contractor to do this for me? So I will put, or maybe Marianne, you can put into the
Sure.
chat, clca.org. That is the California Landscape Contractors Association. Also Quell, also WWLP. There are lots of resources. Actually, the book that you're going to get has links to some of those resources. How often do you need to change or renew the mulch? You never change or renew mulch. Mulch decomposes, it turns into soil, it improves the soil. You add mulch, but you don't need to change it. So in the beginning, when you're, especially if you have removed carbon from the site, if you've taken grass off the site and you've put down mulch, that mulch is going to be decomposing a lot faster. You're going to have to add more mulch probably in as little as 4 months, depending on the time of year and how much water and how much plants and stuff. But it could be like 3 or 4 months later that you're covering your irrigation lines with another 2 or 3 inches of mulch. And you're thinking, where'd the mulch go? Well, it's being turned into soil. And over time, that rate of change slows down. So whereas in the beginning, you may need to add more organic matter, top off with mulch twice a year, 3 times a year. In the next year, it will slow down. It maybe will be 1 time less. In the next year, even less. And eventually, 3 or 4 years later, the plants themselves are making their own mulch, and you don't need to continually add it. Good ground cover that bees don't like.
Maybe there's another way of looking at that, in that there are ground covers that bees would like, but if you mow it, there's no flowers that would attract the bees. So Carapia is an example of that. You can do the same thing with yarrow. You can do the same thing with some of the thymes, although those are sort of a mixed bag, the thymes, the woolly thymes.
Yeah, times don't really take a mow.
Yeah.
But the Carapia will. It'll take a mow, then you never get any flowers, no bees, no. I mean, it's sad because I don't particularly like Carapia when it doesn't have flowers on it, but others do, and so it's green. And yarrow, yeah, those are good choices. You want something that is tender enough that it can be mowed, because there's really almost nothing. I mean, grasses don't usually flower in a way to attract bees. They attract other insects. But if it has any kind of flower on it, you know, a bee's going to come. So you need it to be soft enough that you can mow it. Let's see. Mary Ellen wants to learn more about irrigation.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure we have a class in the
Let me
calendar.
just, yeah, let me check on that. You
And put the
keep
link in
answering.
there.
Yeah.
Is it okay to use free mulch? Yes, free mulch from your tree cutters is the best mulch. Free is great. Also free if you have a municipality that's making mulch, that's terrific. The best mulch is fresh mulch, because fresh tree trimmings and a mix of green and brown, very small. So you're looking for it to be chopped up like 1.5 inches, not big stuff, not walk-on bark, small stuff. Why? You want it to decompose, first of all, so it has to be small. And secondly, that green and brown mixture coming from the tree trimmer, that is covered in microbial activity already, and it will just start to decompose really fast and build your soil. I mean, if you leave a pile of that stuff sitting around, it can begin to stink, and that's indicative of microbial activity. So you want to get the tree trimmings from your, tree trimmer and get them down on the ground as fast as possible. Spread them out, get some oxygen in there. Yes. Oh, wonderful. And there are a lot of, so we we did talk about a lot of plants that don't need much water in this class. It's just embedded, in the process of garden making and changing from grass to garden. But again, many of the other webinars that we're doing with California American Water have specific references to to plants that are great in gardens. We have a conventional, did we do conventional gardens this year? I don't remember. But anyway, we have a lot of information about that. And so
Yeah. I was
watch
saying we've got designing for dry shade too. And other
Oh,
landscape chat where we talk about
oh
what to
yes,
plant on a
for
hillside.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Designing for dry shade has a lot of, I mean, it's kind of nonstop indicating plant material. And also in the Q&A, I indicated quite a lot of plants, mostly grasses, of course. And really, it's because it is so hard to remove grass. I'm a big fan of adding grasses into grass. Let's see, is there anything else? I think that is pretty good.
Yes. Oh, Wendy says there's a drip class coming up. And then also
Yes.
the link that I put in the chat is we have been recording classes for California American since the beginning of the year. So some of them are still available. What I sent you was actually the California American channel. So you can see everything that's already been recorded. They are free to you as California American customers, so take advantage of them.
Absolutely.
And we also have coming up mid-September is a class that is resilient alternatives to removing turf, which is a lot of what Pamela's been talking about, creating that
Thank you.
you
I
know,
knew it was there somewhere.
polyculture, rather than a monoculture. So yeah, that's coming up in mid-September.
Yeah, that's terrific. There are just so many great classes that we have done that you can watch online and upcoming. So stick with it. Stay on the email blast, and you'll learn about these upcoming classes. And thank you for joining us. One of the great things about this is we always have somebody behind the scenes answering questions. So, it's like a landscape consultation. Take advantage of it.